We begin with breaking news from Syria this hour. Government troops have liberated the city of Mayadeen from Islamic State. That's according to the Russian Defense Ministry. With the details for us now, Nikki Urin.
Mayadeen is one of the last remaining ISIL strongholds, so the liberation of the city is likely to come as a major blow to the terrorist group. Citing a military source, the Sana news agency has reported that soldiers are now driving the remaining jihadists out of the city, while work is underway on removing landmines and booby traps left behind by the militants. Mayadeen lies in the Deir ez-Zor province, situated just south of the provincial capital, and this area has witnessed some of the fiercest fighting between Islamic State and Syrian forces as government troops battle to push the Islamists out. Syrian army troops successfully reached the outskirts of Mayadeen earlier this month, effectively trapping ISIS in the city. And of course, Russian forces have been actively supporting Syrian troops too, with a Russian naval task force launching cruise missile strikes on terrorist positions in Mayadeen, while dozens of militants have been killed in a series of Russian airstrikes across the province in recent weeks. And all this comes just one day after the Russian General Staff announced that Islamic State now controls less than 8% of Syria due to major successes of the Syrian troops.
Less than 8% of Syrian territory remains under ISIL control. The Russian Air Force will continue its operations against ISIL and Nusra terrorists until they're completely eliminated.
The liberation of Mayadeen means that Islamic State's presence in Syria has shrunk further, leaving the group wounded and, most crucially, more vulnerable. Perhaps the perfect time for government troops to intensify its anti-ISIL campaign.
Yeah, that's the situation as it stands. For more on this, let's join Amar Wakaf, founder and director of Gnosis, an organisation that reports on Syria and the Middle East. He joins us live. You're very welcome. How long could it take, do you think, to liberate this remaining 8% of Syrian territory from ISIL?
Well, it's going to take a while, because we need to understand that Daesh or ISIS doesn't only operate in Syria. It also operates in adjacent Iraq. And, for example, if the Syrian army and its allies manage to push Daesh all the way towards the Syrian-Iraqi border, there would still be some territory on the eastern of that within Iraq, which is the western Anbar province, that needs to be cleared as well. So both countries and their allies need to work in tandem. Otherwise, you cannot commit many troops on a very extensive borderline and be able to protect everything. You would have sometimes a group of 100, 200 fighters breaking in and causing havoc, just like what happened, for example, in Al-Qaryatain very recently, eastern of Homs. They traveled about 200 kilometers, actually, under the watchful eye of the Americans, apparently. So it will take some time, but major city after major city is falling, and this is very significant, which would hopefully affect the morale of the remaining fighters and hasten the fall of this heinous organization.
Mayadeen was liberated, I suppose you could say, relatively quickly, particularly in comparison with Deir ez-Zor, several parts of which are still under ISIL control. What have been the main differences in the two operations?
Well, Deir ez-Zor, first of all, had been divided as a city between those Syrians who did not want to, or did not accept, basically, to go under Daesh control, and Daesh itself. So the lines and the trenches and everything are very much stiff. Mayadeen doesn't have, apparently, this divide within the city. It has always been under Daesh control for a while now, since Daesh came, and basically, we knew, well, i.e. the Syrian government, the allies, everyone who wants to get rid of Daesh, they knew where to bomb, and the fighters within the city couldn't entrench themselves very much, whilst the situation in Deir ez-Zor is slightly different, and the fighters of Daesh know exactly where to hide, and you have to be careful because they hide among civilians. They don't have clear areas apparently where you can bomb without having or causing huge collateral damage. So it will take some time.
Yeah.
But the good news is the Syrian army, having crossed the Euphrates a little bit south of Deir ez-Zor, is now heading north back on the other side of the Euphrates, the eastern bank, and is encircling those Daesh forces from behind. So this would also hopefully speed up the clearing of Deir ez-Zor itself, but it would also take some time.
Just on another aspect to get your thoughts in, Amar, the city of Raqqa, north of where we're looking on the map there in eastern Syria, that's where the US-backed anti-ISIL operation is ongoing. The Russian military has said that the coalition is using the wrong tactics as they're trying to destroy the city's water supplies, which could, of course, impact greatly on civilians. Your thoughts on that aspect?
Well, yes, I mean, we're hearing a lot of reports that the bombing of the Americans since this operation started 4 months ago hasn't been very accurate, and they couldn't care less about what they are bombing, whether this is severe or, important infrastructure that the population could use later on or not. And apparently Daesh being hidden behind civilians all the time, this caused a lot of civilian casualties. But let me just give you one example of how the United States are not really up to scratch in the game that Daesh is playing. A few weeks back, when the Syrian army and the Lebanese army and Hezbollah launched an operation in eastern Lebanon to get rid of Daesh, there was an agreement by which the Daesh fighters would go with their families using buses towards Deir ez-Zor. The Americans bombed and stopped those, and this backfired because now there is apparently an agreement for the remaining Daesh forces to get out of Raqqa, but they're refusing to go out without taking civilian hostages with them, which tells you that the United States policy has backfired, and they're forcing somehow Daesh to, even if they do not necessarily wish so, to hide behind civilians. So, you know, they haven't been very clever about this.
We appreciate your time and thoughts as always. Thanks for taking it so early on this breaking news over the last few hours as well. Political analyst Ammar Wakaf speaking to us live.